We had a coffee, a tea, we're all awake? No. Well, there's a little bit of water at the back of the room, that might help us, and then I think we have a bit of a break later on. I want to welcome you all this morning to Smartest Girl in the Room, and I think that we've got a room full of exceptional smart girls. Give yourselves a round of applause for being here right early at 11. And of course I have a fantastic distinguished panel here to my left. And just a little bit of introduction. Thank you all so much for being here at Social Media Week. Smartest Girl in the Room discussion. On behalf of everyone here, I would like to thank Diageo for hosting this session as part of their Plan W initiative, which aims to empower 2 million women in the Asia Pacific by 2017. And just a little thing that I want to add about Plan W. The online activation is called Plan W Boost, and that's what these particular banners are about, if you're wondering what this is about. This is basically an online activation to, I'm just reading my notes really quickly because I was just told this morning. It's about empowering 2 million women. We've actually supported 3 organizations, Better Barista, Athena Network, and Give. They're going to have the opportunity to pitch women's empowerment proposals to the public. And what they're doing is they're doing it through 3 hashtags online. And the hashtags are Plan W Athena, Plan W Better Barista, and Plan W Give. And what's going to happen is that the amount of public support for each of these initiatives will be tracked online and via the hashtags. And at the end of it, the grand prize is a lovely $10,000 boost, and they will get a chance to make active their proposal, make it a reality. So if you want to know a little bit more about it, these are the banners, and find those hashtags as well. And of course, a little bit about Social Media Week. It's a global conference held simultaneously across 24 cities. Social Media Week is taking place in Singapore for the second time, produced by AKA Asia. There are over 40 engaging events across the week. This morning, it's going to be extremely engaging, we promise you. From panel discussions to networking sessions, online activations, and this year has seen a staggering 5,000 registrations for the week's events. So, without further ado, what does it mean to be a woman in business today? The smartest woman or person in the room, especially when we look at traditionally male-dominated industries like tech, startups, alcohol, and politics. And what role does social media actually play? And please allow me to introduce my panel this morning, who I am expecting to turn everything on its head, to share their strategies and experiences, as well as take some questions from the floor, which we'll do in the last 15 minutes of our hour, on how women are changing it up, the progress of attitudes and industries, the realistic challenges faced, and the use of social media in progressing businesses, industries, and selves. My speakers to my left, I have the wonderful Sunita Kaur, who's a sales director at Facebook Asia. Sunita, if you would just take a few minutes to introduce yourself, please.
Absolutely. So excited to be here. As Anita mentioned, I'm the director for Asia Pac for Facebook, based in Singapore, and been in the industry for 16 years. So have really seen both the industry and women in the industry change greatly, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Thank you very much, Sunita. Siobhan.
Hi there, I'm Siobhan Hamilton and I work at Diageo. I'm the General Manager for mainly Singapore, Malaysia and the Philippines. And I also have been in my industry for 16 years, quite a long time. And I think what's fascinating as I look back and why I'm excited today is I look back at not just how the industry has changed, but also how I as a woman operating in that industry have changed. And I think that applies just to how women have changed and how women in business have changed. So I think it could be a really great discussion.
Thank you very much, Siobhan Hamilton. And moving on down, what have we got there? We've got Grace. Grace Pappan, co-founder of the Secret W business. Grace, if you would please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I'm really excited for today, and as Mia said, I'm a co-founder of Secret Women's Business, which is a network throughout Asia Pacific for aspiring and current women entrepreneurs. My background is marketing, brand management, and fashion, and I do run several other networks for the creative sector and women in marketing and creative businesses.
Thank you very much, Grace. And last but certainly not least, Margaret Manning. She's the CEO of international digital communications business Reading Room, a global top 10 digital agency.
Hi, something about the magic 16 here. Reading Room was founded in a back bedroom 16 years ago by actually myself and my husband. I've run it ever since. We now have 250 people, and it's moved from me being the only girl in the room in most events 16 years ago to now there are 2 or 3 of us. I am also a self-professed geek.
Fantastic panel. How about a nice round of applause to get us started? Thank you very much for a wonderful introduction. So I'd like to get the ball rolling by quoting a little bit of information from a recent HBR blog network piece about how female leaders should handle double standards. And the quote was attributed to Christine Lagardère in reference to stereotypes cast in stone as making women feel they had to act like men to be heard. And her response to that is, they're the difference. In the same article, Sheryl Sandberg of Facebook, Anita, I'll be expecting something from you on this, is quoted in the same article as saying women are perceived as too soft or too tough, but never just right, and as competent or likable, but rarely both. So the question I'd like to start off with is, are women still being evaluated against a masculine standard of leadership? Or is this a stereotype we can agree to move beyond? I'm going to ask Margaret Manning to begin. Margaret, I'm just going to throw a few things at you. You know, a digital communications agency that challenges convention and technology, and everything else in between. So I'm going to let you start.
Okay. I've got a perspective on this for quite a while ago. When I first started in work in 1981, I thought to myself, wow, we are at the start of this something new, and by the time my daughters come into the workplace, things will have changed. Absolutely, things will have changed. I then started looking at the statistics when my daughters did actually go to university. The statistics for women in business have not changed as much as I hoped that they might do. And I became very involved at that point with trying to help mentor girls. The question is, are we being evaluated against male standards? And I believe that in many instances, yes, we are. Particularly when we come up in the male world. For example, we try and get finance, we go to banks, we try and get overdrafts. We are being evaluated against men. And there's this beautiful shibboleth, a male can be assertive and a female in the same circumstances exhibiting the same behaviour is perceived as aggressive. And it does still apply. Can we move beyond it? Yes, absolutely we can. By being ourselves and by creating role models, and those role models for our daughters and for our sons.
Siobhan, if you could take that over, because we had a prior conversation a little bit about the work that you do. I mean, you work in an entirely perceived male-dominated industry, and alcohol is primarily, or it seems to be, only marketed to men. And we were actually talking about the absence of role models. We were also talking about the fact that some of this perception of how women are being held to a standard is actually changing.
Yeah, sure. I think look, alcohol is a traditionally male industry, and arguably more so in this part of the world than other parts of the world. And if I'm honest, I think when I started my career in alcohol 16 years ago, you know, my solution to fit in, and in the absence of knowing anything else, was to always try and be one of the boys. You know, that's what I did. What did I do? I drank out of pint glasses. I never had half a pint of Guinness. If everyone was having a pint of Guinness, I had a pint of Guinness with them, because that's what the boys did. And that's not necessarily something I'm proud or not proud of. It was what I did to fit in. I think as the industry has evolved, but more importantly, as people have evolved within it, I think there are other strategies that I've kind of learned how to apply, you know. So it is a male industry. There is a lot of relationship building while having a whiskey potentially late at night. You know, that's not my thing. I've got 2 small children. I don't really want to do that. It also is in an environment that isn't necessarily where I personally want to be. And so what I've learned is that actually the way for me to do it is do it in my own way. So the outcome is I need to, you know, sell more, or I need to have a certain contract, or whatever the outcome is, it's no different to the male outcome. It's just the way that I get there is probably very different. And I think focusing on that has allowed me to go, I don't need to worry about how other people do this, I just need to think about what we need to deliver. And that's kind of how I approach it. I think, to the other points you raised there about, role models and marketing to men. I think alcohol is a male industry, but in terms of consumption of alcohol and people who enjoy it, it's kind of more gender neutral than that. And I think in the context of that, what we have found, controversial as it may be, is that women don't really want to be marketed to directly. So what we try and do is be bilingual. We call it bilingual, but this is not about just watching all the boys on the telly going out for a drink and that's how you do it. It's about much more than that. It's about kind of gender neutral occasions, gender neutral groups, and how you actually use that as a way. Because in many cases, I think there was a great tweet up there. I don't know, is it gone? But it's, there we go, something about as long as women keep thinking of themselves as the woman in the industry, we're never going to be equal to men. And I thought it was a great tweet, because it's not always about the diversity. It's just about, whether it's are you great at your job or are you not great at your job? And the male-female piece is kind of irrelevant.
I want to come back to talk about that, because I think we can get into a really good discussion about where women really are at this point in industry and with themselves. But I'm just going to throw this question, thank you very much, Joanne. I'm just going to throw this question over to Grace. Because Grace, you primarily deal with women-only business models and largely only with women. And we've had conversations about a lot of women's companies employing the rather sort of the other side of it. It's the female sort of rah-rah sisterhood type mentality, methodology, which can end up narrowing and generalizing. And these are all female-driven oriented businesses. And there is a downside, of course, and a pitfall where a woman is trying to exist only in a woman's only environment and actually falls flat. So maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think I come from a position where I feel similar to yourself, where women, it's up to our individual self to push ourselves. I do think that there are times where we try and have this rah-rah sisterhood, but I feel that women complement men, we don't supplement men. I think by running a female-orientated business is each to their own. It doesn't mean that you're any less of an entrepreneur or any less of a businesswoman because you are catering to a female market. It is one of the largest markets out there. I feel hiring other female individuals because you want to isn't necessarily the best. Only because you do need to have a male perspective sometimes, and you do need to have the opposite side in order to create innovation and have creativity in your business. You need a different point of view. So I do run women's groups or communities, but I very much come from the point where it's like we're here to support other women, rather than like go women power, because I think each individual can empower themselves in their own ways, and it's up to your passions and your drives for where you want to go.
Great, and I think we can touch on a little bit more of that and expand a little bit more when we talk in a bit about where women are actually today. But Sunisa, you had mentioned to me that can we move beyond gender? Because I think the way you work at Facebook, it's a corporation that is moving beyond gender through very strong female leadership and some very interesting benefits as well. If you could share those, please, with everyone.
Sure. I think the most interesting, when I think back on my journey when I started in media back in 1996, was my first job with a company that will remain nameless was, if the big bosses from New York came to town, we weren't allowed to wear pants. We had to wear skirts and tights. And thinking back then and where we are now, it's been incredibly progressive, especially from the publishing industry. And working for Facebook right now, I've been there for 2 years now, and I think we're very, very lucky because we have women like Sheryl Sandberg and Carolyn Peterson, who just look at everything beyond gender, beyond orientation. So we have a women's leadership team at Facebook, and everything that we build for Facebook is beyond that. So we build benefits for men, For example, in the US, women get 4 months maternity leave, men get 4 months paternity leave. Because the way we think about it is there should be no difference. It's, you know, we are not going to treat ourselves differently, and we should not allow the men to treat themselves differently. Same with same-sex orientation. So all benefits, regardless of your orientation, extend to your spouse. So it's things like that that I think help a lot of us at Facebook see past gender.
Thank you. I'm now going to sort of move it into the conversation I think we really should be having today, which is, you know, where are women in their thought processing about this? Because I think there's a lot out there about how, you know, we're in a man's world, but we're also very much in a woman's world. And have women themselves really moved beyond gender and stereotype themselves? And I think this is part of the greater conversation that we've all been having just before we started the session about where women are right now. And I thought, Margaret, you had some very good insights earlier. You know, we were talking about where do women stand in the world right now. You know, there was a moment where it was nobody knew what women wanted, or they were told what they wanted. Then it was what do women want, and then it was what women want. So where are we now, really?
Okay, I just want to say as well, I can't agree more with the concept of beyond gender. I think if we could grasp that concept beyond gender and start looking beyond somebody's genders, beyond somebody's orientation, and just treat people as people, it would dramatically change women's lives in the workplace. Within Reading Room, we have always had a concept of beyond gender. It doesn't matter whether you're male or female, you have exactly the same benefits. We've never run a quota system, never, and yet 4 out of our 5, we've gone the other way, 4 out of our 5 managing directors are women. And not because we've had a quota of what we wanted that, just the talent rises to the top, and this is in a tech industry. So where we see ourselves in this kind of beyond gender world is vital.
Margaret, you actually brought up a couple of points about role models, which I thought it would be nice for you to expand on a little bit. When people have come to your company for interviews, there were some interesting reactions.
Yes, we started off not even thinking about these things until one of my marketing people said, right, you've got to enter an Entrepreneur of the Year award, and it's a female Entrepreneur of the Year award. And I had a bit of a battle with myself about whether I was going to do that or not, and decided maybe I was going to enter a female Entrepreneur of the Year award, and went round to all the people within Reading Room and got them to say a little bit about what it felt like to work within Reading Room. And what came back absolutely critical to the success of the business was that the men were saying, as well as the women, it's not about being a woman or not, it's not about giving opportunities to women, it's that you give opportunities to all of us. And I think that was so critical to what then happened, which was we made sure that those opportunities were given to new people coming into the business, whether they were men or they were women, and we have a very balanced recruitment process. So we don't go out after recruiting women, we actually make sure that both men and women are doing recruitment, and we balance our business like that. And it's vital for us to have a really good, well-balanced business. Not all men, not all women, great team, because what we're about, obviously, we're about financial success, we're about expansion, and to not have half the pool of talent on your side is just blinking.
Who else would like to jump in on this? I thought Grace was leaning forward for just a second, but she wasn't. I think it was actually Siobhan that was going to say something. We talked about this as well earlier. I mean, you have a bunch of dichotomies going on. A woman working in a traditionally male business, and also we were talking about how the perceptions of women in male businesses has changed. We talked about teams being more balanced because you need men and women to make these decisions more logically. You also brought up a rather interesting point about the reasons why some of these things actually go wrong because of the actual structure that exists around a lot of the decision making. If you could expand a little bit on that.
Yeah, I think in business, in some ways it's harder for women now than ever before, in a sense, because it's like those quotations that you started with, we're either too soft, or we're too tough, or we're too girly, or we're too masculine, and there's so many twos. But I think and we're also, I think, we get nervous about the rah-rah sisterhood, so whenever there's a women's group, or like you've got a women's group in Facebook, it's like, oh, is that exclusive to excluding men, and is it the rah-rah sisterhood? So I think, it is actually quite tough. But I do think we need some structures around these things. So, where we try and go in Diageo now is we try and have women and men recruit together, because it just brings a different perspective. It's not intentional, we all recruit people who are just like us, that's human nature. We try and ensure that for every role there's at least one female candidate. She's not going to get the role because she's female, she's going to get it because she's capable enough. And I think those kind of changes will eventually lead to change, because ultimately, like I work for a multinational organisation, so I'm under no illusions. It's about making money. It's about delivering your profit. It's about delivering the bottom line, and balanced teams. Teams with men and women in my industry deliver more profit for a company. So this isn't about putting women in there because we can say, look at that now, we're such a great forward-thinking company. Like, it's ultimately about delivering for shareholders and delivering your bottom line. And the reality is that better decisions get made when you have a mixed gender in there. That's just the reality. It's not about, and that's why moving beyond gender is so important.
Grace, how do you manage with the entrepreneurs that you are dealing with, largely women? How do you ensure that what you're inculcating as well in the people that you're mentoring and so on, that they are also moving beyond gender, or is everybody already there?
I think for us, it's really about creating ecosystems, right? Or for what we do. And so the women that we do have in our networks are very much beyond gender. In fact, actually, most of the women in there think that we are our own worst enemies, right? Women ourselves are the most bitchiness, we hate on other women.
We've had this conversation about the female-to-female misogyny that exists within businesses, within communities, and so on.
And so I feel that it's also about you, so us as the curators of the event, or us as organizers and co-founders, it's about what we project out there. It's an educational process. We're also getting to, reach out to other women who may feel slightly different, and giving them that understanding that, hey, we're all here to help, we need to collaborate, but we also need to move beyond the idea that, woe is me, or play on the victim side of being a woman. I really believe that we do a lot of the times put it on ourselves, and I got to where I was because I was passionate and I wanted to make a difference and make a change. And I feel that if each individual man or woman is going to do that, they're going to get far, and they're going to take leadership and catalyze change.
Now, obviously, we have a great panel here, and everyone has had these particular experiences. But there may be women in the room who are sitting there and thinking, "Well, I've never actually had that experience where either the structure around me or the company that I work for or the people that I know are really moving beyond gender." So what I'm trying to get a handle on is, do you, as a panel, feel that women have arrived at that point already? Because we did have a conversation earlier a little bit about how there are still many structures that are very female-centric for the sake of being female. Grace, perhaps you could talk on that.
I think on that side, why we created a women's community was really to connect other like-minded women. And I felt more comfortable as a woman as well around other women to share my experiences. And I also can help mentor other women to feel confident in themselves. It's not necessarily because we don't want men coming in, but men can start their own men's groups as well. There's nothing right or wrong with that, if they want. For me, it was just I wanted to connect with other like-minded individuals and make it accessible for other women to come in and learn about entrepreneurship and innovate and make change. That's really what it was. nothing. I think sometimes we overanalyze things.
Isn't perhaps also, did you have something to say at the end there, Margaret?
Yes, the concept of overanalyzing things, yes, I think that's probably right. I'm going to be a little bit controversial here.
No, please be a lot controversial.
All right,
thank you.
A lot controversial. I'm pleased I'm saying this with my female entrepreneurships that's sitting at the back of me, so I've got probably no right to say it. But I've never spoken at a women-only event. That could be almost the same. I've never spoken at a women-only event. I've never joined a women's-only organisation. Now, I think that there is absolutely place for them, but they do make me a little bit nervous. Basically because I think in this kind of beyond gender that I would like to see, what would I feel like if one of my senior guys came and said, right, I'd like Greenland to pay for me to join an all-male group? I would be very, I'd be frank, I wouldn't like it. So I am nervous about all women organisations.
Can I just say,
Please jump in,
touch on
please.
that? Because I agree not paying for something. We are a free membership, and I totally understand where you're coming from, and I think that's why it's one of those things where, you know, we have male speakers and all of that sort of stuff. It's more a community and a support system versus this is like, you know, ego for the women sort of.
I was talking, as we were talking earlier, I was talking about female-only groups. In certainly the history of digital, I've never seen so many female-only groups springing up across international borders. So, for example, Girl Geeks is one of those. And I do have a passing sympathy for Girl Geeks, but it kind of feels like as long as you have a requirement for an organisation called Girl Geeks, then we haven't got to the point where we are beyond gender.
I just have a thought on this, which is this comes back to women. I think I kind of said it earlier, you know, we get a bit nervous about all-girl groups because that means we're kind of excluding men, and the whole point was that they excluded us and now we don't want to be excluded. But you know, part of me wonders, do we just do it differently? So, for example, and I'm going to stereotype, so I say that up front, you know, I look at how my husband does this, you know, he goes and plays golf with the boys. Now, that is, let me tell you, somewhere where the girls are seriously not welcome, right? You know, we are not welcome to go and do that. And that's where he gets his male connection from. He gets it from that. But the way that they articulate it is, it's about the golf. Now, actually, when I ask him about it, really, it's not actually so much about the golf, so much about the male time and the male connection. And they talk about work, and they talk about the kids, and they talk about the challenges. And I think for women, for whatever reason, in history, we haven't grown up or there hasn't been as many natural places where it's kind of acceptable to almost just be women. So we've created these networks for support. And I think that for me is the ultimate thing, is about how can we as women support each other more. And I don't think we do it as well as we could. And whether that is in a business sense or in a parent sense, you know, there's a huge divide between working women and stay-at-home women. You know, there's a comment earlier on the tweet board about, you know, this panel is not representative of Singapore women. And you know what? I think that's 100% true and 100% right. But it's representative of some sort of group of women. And we need to find ways to support each other through those different groups of women with different with different roles in society, without being judgmental or critical, or without lacking support. And so I have empathy for the not wanting too many female networks, but I also have empathy for the need to support each other much more.
I had a situation where when I was at work, I had 2 children and I was at work, and I was had a great group of friends in a small village that I lived in, and I was it wasn't a very high-powered job or whatever, but then I got a pay rise and then I got a very smart car. And I drove the very smart car back home, and I was very proud of it. You know, maybe very practically right, but I was very proud of my very smart car. And I was immediately ostracised by the female group, the stay-at-home female group. So it is actually very interesting how women treat each other, and how they are sometimes nervous of the people that are staying at home, or the people staying at home and nervous of the people that are working.
Sunita.
Sorry, I just wanted to, I picked up on that same tweet about how this panel is not representative of Singapore women. I'm a Singapore woman. I was born in Singapore. I was brought up in Singapore. Everything that I wanted to do on my own. I made the choices. I learned and I spoke up. And I think it doesn't matter where you live, but again, going back to moving beyond gender, you're a human being, and you should be able to do absolutely anything you want to. And the other point, which I thought was really interesting, was these women's groups across almost every company in the world. And one standing joke we had at Facebook when we started the women's group about a year ago was, the boys used to say, so do you guys eat cupcakes and just plait each other's hair? And we thought, do we? We would like to, but we don't want to do that. So at a lot of our women's meetings, we don't just talk about how do we balance work, life, children, career, but we talk about issues that could also apply to men. Like, you know, the last one we had in January was about salary negotiation. Why are women? We've always struggled with salary negotiations, and guys are so strong and good at that. So when we started tabling that, we had a lot of guys in the office go, I'd like to get involved in that. So the women's leadership team is actually evolving to include men, which is great.
Fantastic. Actually, I'd like to ask, just throw it out to the crowd actually, why there is a perception that the panel doesn't actually represent Singaporean women. I'm very interested to know. And if the person who put it out there wouldn't mind standing up and just throwing some stuff at us, that would be great. Not going to happen? Tweet it. Tweet it to us. No, because you know the point about this. Yeah, the point about this is that we really, when I spoke to each of the panelists, the point was not to come here and gender stereotype ourselves or gender stereotype the discussion that we were planning to have this morning. It was to blow the lid off of all of the stereotypes, and also if there are certain things that really do exist and still exist within it's not about male bashing or female misogyny. You know, it's really about what's existing in big businesses and small businesses for women. And for me, as a women's advocate myself, I'm very interested to understand where women stand for themselves right now. And I often believe that women can be their own worst enemies. This is not to blame women for the problems that might exist around them. And I think, Siobhan, we had an interesting conversation about structure. How, you know, you might be exactly what we've talked about, a person who wants all the equality and so on, but yet the structure that exists around you is very old school. And that actually stops you often from progressing forward. So is it a matter of choosing the right kind of companies to work for as well? And for choosing the right kinds, and is there such a thing as a right kind of a company for a woman, or a right kind of a business, because that wouldn't be the business you're in then?
Yeah, look, I don't think there's such a thing as a right kind of company or a right kind of industry for a man or a woman. I think there is different companies have different cultures that again are gender neutral, right? So, you know, in Diageo we have a global vision, right, which is around celebrating life every day, everywhere. That's our kind of global purpose. Now, a lot of people get incredibly passionate about that. They can, you know, debate the words of that for hours and hours, and that's not what motivates me to